So for my project, I decided to focus on Hamlet. And so my project is basically like analyzing the outer and inner appearance of two of the main protagonists of the play, Hamlet and Ophelia. In these two particular cases, the true feelings of Hamlet and Ophelia are never extremely clear, even though the reader is experiencing the events of the play through the viewpoint of an omniscient third party. The first portrayal of Hamlet that the reader encounters describes him as wearing inky clothing, or his mourning clothes, following the recent death of his father. Gertrude asks him why he seems so sad, and he replies, "'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river in the eye, nor the dejected behavior of the visage, together with all forms, moods, shapes of grief, that can denote me truly." And this quote is basically showing that Hamlet objects to his mother's idea that what he's wearing or how he appears to people on the outside cannot even begin to describe how he's feeling on the inside. And so I chose to cover the front of this board, which is Hamlet's, with an opaque black cloth to represent how he looks on the outside. And the black is obviously like pertaining to him being in mourning from his father's death. And the inability of the viewer to see through the fabric represents the fact that none of the accompanying characters in the play can really see through Hamlet. And in other words, no one really knows exactly what he's going through. And so the inside of the board shows his innermost thoughts and feelings and the emotions that might not be apparent to any of the other characters. Okay, and so one of the first images is pencils, and some of them are like kind of dull, and they represent how Hamlet feels dull and as though life is essentially hopeless or pointless, for lack of better words. And as he says in Act 1, Scene 2, line 6, he says, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. O God, God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on't, ah fie, 'tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed, things rank and gross in nature possess it merely." And so this quote is basically showing his unwillingness to live anymore after his mother's betrayal of his father and, of course, his father's death. And the next pictures, the toolbox and this mannequin and the colorful picture. These three pictures represent how Hamlet is feeling cluttered and confused by recent events and isn't very clear-headed. These feelings might have been the cause of his impending insanity. He shares these feelings in Act 1, Scene 5, when he says, "How strange or odd, soe'er I bear myself, as I perchance hereafter shall think meet, to put an antic disposition on." This quote appears at the point where Hamlet either chooses to or actually does become crazy. All the feelings, the confused feelings he's been having pertaining to his father's death, Claudius and Gertrude, have caused him to snap. And then the blue and then the heart with the piece missing. These pictures represent how affected by his father's death Hamlet truly was. He also is sad because he is so disturbed by the fact that his mother can get over his father so quickly. And it's shown in his quote on Act 1, Scene 2. "A little month, or ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe, all tears. Why she, even she, O God, a beast that once discoursed of reason, would have mourned longer, married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules." And the mood of the play varies directly with how Hamlet is feeling. In this quote, he is comparing his father to Claudius and how much of a better person he is than, or how much better of a person King Hamlet is than him. And it really shows how Hamlet looked up to his father and really misses him. Then the shoes, the chocolates, and the bouncing cups and the scale. These images represent Hamlet's inconsistency. He is constantly changing, and although he is the same person on the outside, his feelings are on the inside are in turmoil. Queen Gertrude exhibits Hamlet's inconsistency in the following quote from Act 4, Scene 2. Mad is the sea and wind when both contend, which is the mightier in his lawless fit. And so this quote is comparing Hamlet to the wind and how wind is basically unpredictable, and that's how Hamlet can be. So then the planes, and I put them like pointing down because they symbolize like both his descent into madness and just how he distances himself from other people, and so people like don't truly understand what he's feeling. And after the ghost confronts him, Hamlet becomes obsessed with planning his strategy for revenge on Claudius, and he becomes distant from those he loves through his insanity. And then the glasses and the masks. These images represent his skewed outlook on life. He struggles with the uncertainty of death, which is a common motif in the play, but also he can't stand the life that he's presently living. So he's viewing death narrowly, as though there are only two choices. And so his perspective on death and life can be compared to one's vision through the eye holes in a mask. And then, of course, the quote, "To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble." Okay, so that's Hamlet. And then my other board is for Ophelia. And so this board, it's covered with a translucent white cloth. And so the cloth is meant to represent like what I thought she would be wearing when she drowned, because they kind of described it as like floaty and mermaid-like and stuff. Okay, and so the sheerness of the fabric is meant to convey the fact that it was much more obvious, at least the characters thought, or that it was much more obvious why she became crazy. And the color white gives off an essence of innocence, which is like a quality that Ophelia possessed. And but underneath like her outer exterior, she felt a myriad of emotions that ultimately led to her suicide. Okay, so the broken pencil and the broken glass, these images represent Ophelia's breaking point. She felt so much exterior pressure that she snapped, and Claudius responds to the situation like once she went into the room and she was singing and everything, and he said, "Poor Ophelia, divided from herself and her fair judgment, without the which we are pictures or mere beasts." And so through this, the reader is aware of Ophelia's descent into insanity through the reactions of the other characters, but Shakespeare never solidifies an exact cause. The flowers, they represent like her status as an obedient daughter, and she's portrayed like as the good girl or an innocent, like a flower. Also, the flowers are a clear connection to Act 4, Scene 5, where Ophelia hands out flowers to each of the characters, and the flowers she tells have like a specific symbolism and are unique to each character, and the reader like has to deduce for themselves who she gives out the flowers to. And then the pictures of the girls like walking on a wire. These images of the people walking on a wire exhibit Ophelia's inner feelings of vulnerability and angst. These pictures also show how just one incident could set her off the edge. Okay, and then the fish and the melting ice cream, except it's kind of covered up, but these pictures represent how Ophelia feels out of place, like a fish out of water, and basically hopeless. Everything she has been familiar with is slowly fading away, like Hamlet's love and her father dies, and so she doesn't really feel the need to hold on any longer, which might be the reason she didn't try to save herself from drowning. And then I have the quote from her death scene that Gertrude says, "When down her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook, her clothes spread wide and mermaid-like, a while they bore her up, which time she chanted snatches of old tunes, as one incapable of her own distress, or like creature native and endued unto that element. But long it could not be, till that her garments, heavy with their drink, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death. And so this description of Ophelia's death by Gertrude suggests that Ophelia herself is like the water in the sense that water takes the shape of the container that it's in. And so Ophelia kind of is very dependent on the other characters, and she doesn't really, like when Hamlet leaves her and when her father dies, she doesn't know what to do. She can't function on her own. And then the police officer, it's meant to represent the male authority figures in Ophelia's life and how she succumbs to their orders without a second thought. So Polonius, in one part of the play, he forbids Ophelia from seeing Hamlet again. And he says, "In few, Ophelia, do not believe his vows, for they are brokers, not of that dye which their investments show, but mere implorators of unholy suits, breathing like sanctified and pious bawds, the better to beguile. This is for all. I would not, in plain terms, from this time forth, have you so slander any moment leisure, as to give words or talk with the Lord Hamlet. Look to it, I charge you. Come your ways." And the setting of the play takes place during a time when a patriarchal society was very prevalent, and so the constant pressure on Ophelia by her father and Laertes, her brother, could also be one of the underlying reasons behind her death. And then, obviously, I have the things about love, because she's just very confused about how Hamlet really feels about her, and it just takes a toll on her.